let's just start with a couple of introductions. We've got Tassos Kotzanastassis, who's founder and managing director of 8G Capital Partners, and Mitsostergiou, who's director of European research for Savills, joining the panel. Let's just briefly. We know Hilda and Elias, so let's just start with you, Tassos. Just a very brief kind of 30 seconds on you and what you do, and then we'll come to you, Eric.
Thank you, Richard. Hi, everyone. 8G Capital Partners is a private equity firm with principal and advisory activities in Asia and Europe. We have offices in Hong Kong, Istanbul, Athens, Nicosia, and London. So far, we've only been active on the advisory side in Greece, but over the last 12, 15 months, we feel confident enough to go in as investors now.
Great. Thanks very much. Eric.
Mitsostergiou. I'm responsible for European research in Savills. This year, I'm also chair of ULI Greece and Cyprus. I cover all sectors across Europe. Greece is one of them.
That's super, and that also means we can get quite a nice kind of view on Greece, but also with a European perspective, which is great. I guess let's just start. Picking up some of the things in the presentation. I mean, we saw there, Eri, that FDI had been building up, and also the real estate side of that. What's your sense of I suppose the macroeconomy, the market fundamentals? I mean, we've been looking at that with interest, and it's been growing steadily over previous years, past since the global financial crisis. How do you see the macro picture at the moment, particularly related to the real estate side?
I mean, there are a lot of uncertainties and downsides for the whole world there, which we all know, and no need to highlight them. I mean, there is the expectation, obviously, for all economies to bounce back next year. We heard the numbers from the economists; they are positive. I think this positive kind of momentum comes from the pre-health crisis position of Greece and its path to recovery. So, in relation to the real estate sector specifically, obviously there has been a big shock on the tourist sector, which is a big part of the Greek GDP, and that's a risk. There is no doubt about it. We are all hopeful that a vaccine can bring back people to normality, to traveling, especially tourist traveling. I mean, that's probably a good thing that Greece is not, although we have been for years trying to develop the kind of the business travel and the conferences, etc. Now it plays probably in its, in Greece's kind of benefit that it's more for tourist destination rather than for business travel destination, because I expect that this should recover faster. At the same time, the Greek real estate market, it has lost a number of years from the previous crisis, where very limited development has taken place, which means that the modern stock is very limited. And Hilda already alluded to this, that there are going to be development opportunities across sectors. And the last thing is that Greece is also very much more attractively priced to other European markets. Obviously, there is a reason there. There is a high-risk premium investors applied to Greece because of some of the economic weaknesses. But at the same time, I think there can be found very prime opportunities and very attractive pricing levels currently.
Great, thanks. Tassos, I wanted to pick up with you. I mean, that's really interesting that you mentioned there in your in your opening kind of introduction there, that you've obviously been looking at the Greek market for a significant amount of time and consulting on it and various other things. But interesting that you're now seeing that there's opportunities to invest. So what's changed for you? What are you seeing now as an opportunity that maybe you weren't seeing before?
In terms of the macro picture, which is a question you asked, Eri, well, it's all relative. The whole world is in a quagmire, so it's not like there's one place which is isolated. or insulated. Greece, one might argue, is more exposed or less exposed, but we're sitting in the same boat. What I perceive as fundamental changes and now find attractive to go back into the market is that there's political stability, which we've been lacking for a long time. For the first time in a number of years, might I say decades, I see a genuine commitment by the government to curtail on red tape and also follow pro-market policies. So that's very attractive as far as I'm concerned, and it gives me the confidence to go to my investors and partners and say, this is the time to go back in. Eri and Hilda talked about pricing. That's correct. But mind you, pricing is now a relative thing. My favorite recovery letter is now K, which means that several sectors will recover, others might not. But the third pillar that is quite fundamental for us is that the Greek market is chronically undersupplied. You've had a 10-year crisis during which development has been close to nothing. The pandemic now is going to render a number of properties obsolete because we need new standards and new quality buildings. So if you put everything together, I think it's a compelling opportunity.
Okay, interesting. And Eric, just picking up with you in terms of the sectors, Hilda mentioned their residential and there being a change towards maybe longer term letting, those kinds of things. There's obviously been a lot of interest in hotels. And that's always been the case to a certain extent in Greece. But are you beginning to see more interest in things like office obviously we've got logistics, you've got the port of Piraeus there. What's your sense of the sectors more broadly?
Yes, definitely the tourist sector has been traditionally the most attractive for obvious reasons. I think it will remain, let's say broadly, residential. The thing is that I'm just thinking now of the bigger trends, that and the bigger changes that might happen to sectors globally. We might see the lines between sectors blurring. So we might see the hospitality and the residential becoming more, intertwined. We might see new types of products, which I believe Greece can be even a land to test them. As we heard, there are these incentives for retirees to come here. That's a great opportunity to offer the right product for them. Hand in hand can go the healthcare sector with that. And I'm trying to talk a little bit beyond the obvious. The logistics is the obvious one. We see crazy pricing in Europe, a lot of competition in the core markets. Soon we should expect some investors to probably not be happy to pay the keen prices that you see in these core markets and look elsewhere. And as you say, Greece is a gateway of Chinese trade into Europe. As much as it might this trade be hurt to nearshoring trends or these sort of trends, I think that will still remain significant, and that will require the infrastructure around for logistics in combination with the rise of e-commerce and the residential. Yes, the residential can fulfill the new needs that may come from these new trends. But it also needs to fulfill the needs of the market itself. For so many years, as Tassos said, and I mentioned earlier, there hasn't been much developed. So people are looking for affordable but also good quality housing. And offices, the undersupply of offices is so it's striking here. Any demand that will come in will require new offices, and we see IT companies being attracted. We see some call centers. We see some big scale kind of requests that cannot find the right accommodation.
And one of the key things, obviously, looking at the market, especially if we're looking at redevelopment, is obviously the finance side of it. Tassos, what's your view in terms of the financing side? Is finance broadly available? What's the position? Obviously, there were concerns after the financial crisis, particularly about the Greek banks, but certainly from what I've been hearing, that currently banks like Piraeus Bank, for example, are actively lending. What are you seeing in the market?
Okay, in terms of equity, clearly now Greece has to compete with every other European market. It was never a core market. It was sort of interesting before the crisis because pricing was low, but now attention is turning back to Europe, not necessarily because of flight to quality, but because opportunities are emerging. So, for example, one of our partners, we had an update call, and they said that one of the things they're looking at is a distressed office in London, and it's something that we haven't heard for a long time. So equity is plentiful, we know that, but Greece has to compete. The fundamentals are good, pricing is fair, but Greece, unfortunately, may have to take second fiddle to what's happening in the core markets. In terms of debt, well, the banks were very hopeful that they would resolve their NPL problems once and for all. So you had the main big non-granular portfolios trading up to a year ago. This year, it would have been the year of the securitizations. So you have projects like Galaxy, which is a 10 billion project. You have other projects by NBG and what have you. You know, a few billion euros of very big chunks of NPLs that were going to get off their balance sheets, which was going to free up their capital, which would have been redeployed in lending. I'm afraid these plans are now redundant. The latest number we've heard in terms of new NPLs is about 7 to 10 billion. So I think that's another headwind that the banks will find. So in short, are they lending? Yes, they are. We've seen some big funding packages for projects like the Hellenikon. But are the banks willing as fast as they would have liked? I'm afraid not.
Okay, good. Hilda, I just wanted to pick up with you just a point that Eri made about some of the more alternative sectors, particularly in that residential side. Do you think there's an opportunity there for things like student housing, senior housing, co-living, micro-living, those kinds of things perhaps just coming into the Greek market?
Definitely. That's, one word. And, to pick it up with your question, I think we have seen this in this development for co-living or, mixed use spaces and so on, even before the crisis, even before, the COVID crisis. Where big companies like WeWork or other big brand names were looking into Greece and into developing new brands and new ways of office development. So that's actually going to pick up. Yes, that's what we think. That's what we feel.
Okay, good. And Elias, I just wanted to pick up with you. Obviously there's, Hilda highlighted there a number of large scale projects. Mm-hmm. And I guess in terms of the types of investors that are looking for those kind of projects, who are you looking for? Who do you think are going to be interested in that? And also, if there are investors looking at that, I guess what are you guys offering to them, I suppose, in terms of support, information, those kinds of things?
Yeah, that's a very good question. We, according to our experience and the request we are receiving as the National Investment Promotion Agency of the country, we are receiving huge interest from well-established and renowned real estate funds and real estate developers wishing to participate in these projects or wishing to develop the more complicated ones. And here, as you rightly mentioned, Enterprise Greece plays a prominent role. We offer what we call the fast track tool for project realization via the legal framework for strategic investments. So large developers wishing to develop complicated projects have the opportunity to submit their business plan in this framework. We evaluate as an organization their business plans, and we submit our opinion to a committee, the ministerial committee, that decides upon approval to the procedure. The fast track framework accelerates the licensing procedure and offers also the possibility for minor city planning on spatial deviations. So they have the opportunity to build and operate their project quickly and without any delay or obstacle, I would say.
Okay, good. We've got around 5 minutes left, so I just want to drill down a little bit. Eri, just in terms of the, I mean, obviously you're sitting there looking at European research. Have you seen a change in terms of, I suppose, the investor sentiment towards Greece over the last years?
Yes, I mean, over the last years, I think yes, there have been some critical changes lately that also Tassos highlighted, and Hilda and Elias that have enhanced investor confidence. It has been a very unfortunate timing for Greece to experience this crisis now. It was just as businesses and business players basically in the business world were gaining confidence and doing more and investing more, and that's why I think that when hopefully we'll find a definite solution for this, and taking into consideration all the changes we will see in people's behavior towards the real space. Operators, investors will have to adjust, and I think Greece will be part of investor strategies. And I think what Hilda mentioned on the brand, it's a very important thing. Branding is and will be important for everything going forward, for not only for businesses and products, but also for buildings themselves, and also for a country. And the branding of Greece, I think it's gaining ground, and it can be a place which can create this new demand and new business activity in the areas of retirement, of more students studying in Greece, of more young talent being staying in Greece and working for big companies that may take advantage for also competitive maybe labor costs. There are all these areas where the branding of Greece can and should be enhanced and attract more, first people and then businesses.
Yeah, and it's been very interesting to watch. Also, just people's perception changing from country to country based on which may be fair or may not be fair, because there's so many different things that go into it. But actually, what's happened in terms of cases and deaths and those kinds of things related to that, and it's been very interesting to see that Greece, appears to have been extremely successful on that basis. And I think that's also created a different focus on Greece in a way. And Tassos, I just wanted to pick up with you. I mean, it's interesting. I think we've been looking at a number of the sessions around whether or not it's all going to be about one major city in terms of winning cities, or whether or not there's going to be smaller cities will now be able to find, I guess, more of a shining light on them. What's your sense of that for the Greek market? Is it really all about Athens for the majority of the investment kind of topics, or are there opportunities outside of that?
Well, it's an issue of scale. So if you talk about the large private equity investors who want to deploy tens or hundreds of millions at a time, it would be a hard slog to find much outside Athens. So these big investors will continue focusing on Athens, maybe Thessaloniki, which is a 1.5 million city, and there are opportunities. Having said that, we see a number of companies like Regus, Spaces, and what have you, the IWG group, who are developing satellite offices, in line with the new concept that it's not about the central HQ. It's about satellite offices in non-central locations. So if you have the tenant base which develops those spaces and would be prepared to pay a cash flow for those portfolio locations, I think the answer is yes. One can create an institutional portfolio comprising a number of smaller assets outside Athens.
Great, thanks very much. We're sadly running up against time here. but it's been a really interesting session. It looks as though, as opposed to just sitting in my family office, I need to develop a whole family office in order to buy the opportunities on Crete. Hilda, they look a little bit beyond my range currently.
Exactly.
But
you might find partners for that also, Richard.
Well, that's possibly true, but I'd like to put in an indicative interest. But really interesting. Thanks to everybody. Thank you for your kind of views. Thank you, Georgios, Elias, Hilda, Tassos, and Eri. Really interesting session.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Look forward to doing more on Greece. I think it's going to be a really interesting.
If we have one more minute, I would like to end up by underlining something very important. Eri has already referred to that. Without doubt, COVID-19 affected the office market. This is related to the office market because of the teleworking and telecommuting being introduced during the last 8 months. But on the other, we are experiencing a great interest right now in Greece by large multinationals for establishing shared service centers and business process outsourcing centers in the country. And we're experiencing also a lot of Greek owners and rakes wanting to upgrade buildings to grade A status. So there is a major opportunity here. And there is also a reason to boost the office market again. So there is plenty of interest that will boost the office market.
Great, thank you very much.